Welcome to Page One, the show for writers with the reader in mind. Here's your host, Zita Christian.
Hi everyone, welcome to Page One. I'm Zita Christian. My guest tonight is a decorated Vietnam veteran. He is a journalist, an award-winning journalist, nominated for a Pulitzer Prize. His first book, Masters of the Art, a Fighting Marine's Memoir of Vietnam, was published by Random House. His second book is out now. It's called Granny Snatching, and it's about a battle far closer to home. Please welcome Ron Winter. Ron, thanks for coming back on the show.
It's my pleasure, and thank you for having me.
Well, I am fascinated by the whole topic of your book, Granny Snatching. I see things in the news all the time. There are always articles about some family member trying to do something dastardly to another family member, and your book illustrates this in detail that is painful and important. And before we get started, I want to throw out one statistic that kind of sets the stage, I think, for your story. And that is, medical experts say that 50% of Americans will be diagnosed with Alzheimer's as they age. And that means that virtually all of us are going to have to deal with the disease in one way or another. So with that in mind, Ron, what's the story, your story, about Granny Snatching?
Well, actually, our story is about dealing with not having Alzheimer's. My mother, who is now 93, was hospitalized in Albany, New York in December of 2008 with what they called an altered mental status. And as it turned out, her problem, she had been living alone for 10 years, ever since my father died, was dietary in nature. She had very low potassium. She wasn't getting the right amount of vitamins. She had way too much caffeine in her diet. She had some medical problems with her eyes. In New York, my family over there, my sister especially, my brother also, tended to believe that these periods that she was having of confusion or disorientation absolutely meant that she had Alzheimer's, dementia, and when she was hospitalized for 5 days, they decided they were going to put her into a nursing home. Now, I was called when Mom was first put in the hospital, actually about 2 days later, and told that there was going to be a family meeting between Christmas and New Year's of 2008, and everybody would get together and we would decide how to work things out. That was on the 14th of December. On the 17th of December, I got a phone call from my brother-in-law saying they were putting my mother into a nursing home that afternoon, and that if I wanted any input on it, I better call right there. Well, in between those 2 days, my wife and I had talked about this extensively. We had seen situations with her family going back about a decade or so, and we had talked about both of our fathers are dead, both of our mothers are alive. And we decided, she asked me, we talked about it, if it ever comes down to this, we will offer our parents, our remaining mothers, a home, in our home, rather than putting them into a nursing home. And I made that offer on December 17th. My brother-in-law questioned how I could work it out, and I said very simply, we've been homeschooling my youngest daughter for the last 4 years. My office is now in the house. My wife Jennifer works about 5 minutes down the road in Bolton. She has flexible hours at her job there. We have been living this lifestyle for almost 5 years now. Having one more person in this house is not really going to be a problem. It was built for more people anyway. I will have to rearrange the house. I'll have to put my office elsewhere for the time being. When spring comes, we'll have to build an addition to accommodate Mom and all her belongings. But in terms of being able to care for her, we're already set up to do it. We're also in a very good place medically. We have excellent medical facilities in Hebron. We have a emergency room with a helipad 9 minutes away across the line in Marlborough. We have everything we need. We've got Manchester Hospital close by. We actually have 6 hospitals within a 40-minute drive or so from where we are. And at that time, we had no idea what the real problem was with Mom. In fact, she had had an incident a couple of years earlier where what she believes to this day was sleepwalking. She'd come down with a cold. She took some cold medicine that she had been taking for years when she had a cold, didn't realize that the dosage had changed. She was supposed to stop it after 5 days. She continued taking it for 8 days. And one afternoon went in, took a nap, feeling sick and feeling tired, and found herself wandering around in the hallway 2 hours later. She's adamant that was a sleepwalking incident. My family was adamant, no, that's onset of Alzheimer's. Anyway, Mom moved here 3 days before Christmas 2008, and for approximately 10 days, everything was wonderful. But on Christmas Day, my mother found out that my sister had kept her checkbook, and my sister had power of attorney. Mom's point of view was power of attorney is for if I am incapacitated. Yeah. I'm not incapacitated. Give me back my checkbook. My sister said no. They started arguing about this. It went on for the next week. They had an especially long discussion, I guess I could call it, on New Year's Day. And my mother had talked to me at the end of that week about what do I do to rescind power of attorney. I had no idea. I had never been involved in a power of attorney situation, a guardian situation, none of that. But I do have friends in the legal community, and I called one up and asked him, what is it all about? What does this mean? What do we have to do? And he said, it's very easy. He said, as long as your mom's competent, she doesn't want anybody to be power of attorney. She just has to say, you're no longer my power of attorney. He said, there's forms that she can fill out and sign. And he said, if you want, he said, I'll be happy to do it for you. So after she had this discussion with my sister on New Year's Day, which did not go the way she wanted, she told her several times, I want my checkbook. And my sister just flat out refused to give it to her. And Mom told me afterwards, she said, having that checkbook was the biggest anchor in her life since my father died. It was the one thing that gave her a sense of security. She said, without it, and this was classic, she said, I felt like I was out in the middle of a big field covered with snow, no trees, no landmarks, nowhere to tell me where to go or what to do. She said, I felt so alone, so drifting without that checkbook. Knowing that she could write a check to take care of any situation that came up gave her a sense of security that without it, it really got her to a point where she felt, I've got to do something about this. I'm not just going to hand over my money. I'm not going to hand it. And we're not talking an awful lot of money. My mother is not a rich person. She has a pension. She has some Social Security. She had some savings. But this isn't a case of a multi-million-dollar estate in New York City. Like we read in the papers about the ones with the big money.
Right.
But what I found out since this all began is that there's far more cases for far less money that are fought just as intensely. But anyway, on January 1st, 2009, my mother said, okay, that's it. I've had enough. She rescinded my sister's power of attorney. My sister had sent me an email saying the only way Mom's going to have a checkbook in your house is if you open up a bank account in your town. So on the first banking day, we went up and opened up a bank account. Mom changed her accounts from New York to over here, which I should point out, she named me power of attorney and medical power of attorney because she is well aware that she's in her 90s, and she's well aware this can happen. But she also was adamant about it. This is only to be used if I am hospitalized, if I can't speak for myself. This is not something where somebody gets an opportunity to say how I'm going to live my life day by day. In terms of her Social Security or government pension, there was no way I could influence them. The government doesn't recognize power of attorney. The only way she could change her checks to be deposited into her new bank account was to do it herself and to talk with those officials herself. It was the same thing with her banks in New York. She had to talk to them. She had to do it. She changed her address here permanently in the middle of, I think it was the 28th or 29th of December. By the first, I think it must have been the end of the first week in January, she had changed all of her affairs, all of her accounts, everything she had to Connecticut.
Ron, stop just for a minute, because one of the things occurs to me. Initially, when your sister, when the family called and said, okay, we're going to have a meeting and we're going to talk about this, and then very quickly you get a phone call saying, no, we're putting Mom into a nursing home, and if you want anything to say about it, you better get here right now. What do you think was this sudden rush
We don't know,
that?
and we've never had it explained to us why there was a rush. At one point, we thought it was going to be around the 29th or 30th of December, and that had to do with my brother coming up from Florida, everyone's schedules and how it would fit in and where it could be done. On the day that they were going to put my mother into the nursing home in New York, she already had social workers and representatives from the nursing home there. They were going to discharge her from the hospital on the 17th and put her right into the nursing home.
Well,
why? We don't know.
Well, what about the people from the nursing home? Wouldn't they have a conversation with her and be able to deduce that this woman is fine? She had a medical situation, not a mental situation.
Well, in theory, that should have been the case. As it turns out, they never had that conversation. Mom didn't want to go into a nursing home. They'd been trying to, and I say they, I mean my brother and sister, had been trying for a couple of years to convince her first to go in a retirement home, then assisted living, and she was very happy where she was.
Were they in any way obligated to take care of her? Was that part of why they might have not wanted that responsibility?
My sister lived about 5 minutes away from my mother, and that was a living arrangement that went back to the late 80s. She claimed in court later on that she saw my mother every day. My mother disputes that. She said no, she saw her maybe once or twice a week, definitely on Sunday mornings. And in the course of the remainder of the week, she would call every day, but actually see her maybe once, maybe twice. It wasn't anywhere as much as she claimed it was.
Well, forgive my suspicion, but I have to ask, the financial situation of your sister and brother, even though as you described your mother's estate, not as, super wealthy, that, from a socialite in New York City, not that kind of wealth, but there was a pension, there was Social Security.
Absolutely.
Was there, just like they do on the crime shows to say follow the money and find what the motive is, was the need for money, do you think, a motive?
Everyone has asked me that. I don't know enough about my brother-in-law and sister's financial affairs. They live very well. They have a large house. They have new cars. They are in a good financial situation as far as I know. I really can't even speak to what they do or don't have because I don't know, and I have never, intruded into their affairs. But there was a real effort. Earlier that year, my mom transferred some stocks that she had over to my sister. My sister made some kind of claim in her court papers that she never would have taken a dime from my mother, but she took thousands of dollars in stocks from my mother earlier that year. Now, my mother and father had been investing in stocks since they were in Florida in 1979, I think they began it, and the statement had been that these stocks were not going to me at any point, but were going to go to all the grandchildren. Now, in early 2008, I guess it was 1st of May, for what reason, I don't know, but my sister convinced my mother to turn all of her stocks over to her. Mom said that this was in payment for my sister having been there and taking her shopping or coming over to the house or whatever. I don't know, but money was certainly the issue when it got to court, and what happened was, when Mom said, you're no longer my power of attorney and I am moving my affairs over here, within 20 days we were served. We were ready to sit down on a Saturday night for dinner, and a knock came on the door, and there's a process server, and he had 2 copies of a 38-page lawsuit that I like to refer to as a stream of sewer sludge. I could not believe the things that were said in it about my mother and about me. I was accused of kidnapping. Now, my family brought my mother to Connecticut with their cars loaded with as much stuff as they could get in it. Made 2 trips over, brought as much as they could, a lot of permanent belongings. Went back to her apartment the day they dropped her off here on the 22nd of December. On the 23rd of December, without her permission, they went back to her apartment in New York and just began gutting it. They went through all of her belongings. They threw things away. They sold others. They put some in storage. And Mom to this day is looking for things that just disappeared. And yet, when Mom decided to stand on her own 2 feet and say, wait a minute, I might have had an episode, but that doesn't mean you get to keep control of my life, Well, all of a sudden we get this lawsuit. I'm charged with being a kidnapper, unlawful restraint, theft, forgery, because Mom signed documents for her banks and for the federal government. And you'd have to see Mom's signature. Now, she's very fastidious, and she cares about how she signs. But she is 93. And
Sure.
I couldn't mimic that signature if I had a year of practice. I mean, that's her signature. That's all there is to it.
As a handwriting analyst, I can tell you that is very, very difficult. People think they can, but no.
I couldn't do it. And then the other part of the lawsuit was, first off, my sister wanted to be named guardian, which would give her total power over my mother, complete 100% power. They claimed my mother had Alzheimer's and had been treated for it. That wasn't true. She didn't have it, and she was never treated for it. They said in the court papers that her mind was so irretrievably deteriorated that she shouldn't come to court because she wouldn't be able to understand the proceedings or contribute to her defense. They said that that I was influencing her, that she was being held against her will, that my sister should have total control over her person, all of her social interactions, the right to put her into the nursing home, the right to put her on Medicaid, which is something my mother was absolutely against. And then the classic was, and to marshal all of her assets into a bank account in my sister's name, over which only my sister would have control. And the classic, the one that really got the lawyers, made their heads step back, was they got to the very end of it and said, oh, by the way, we want to pay all the legal bills out of Mom's money. So that's where we ended up. And I love the part where they said that she couldn't maintain a complex thought. She was incapable of complex thoughts and reasoning. A year ago this week, my mother was in the U.S. or the New York Supreme Court in Albany and got into a debate with opposing counsel and beat him.
Good for her.
She hammered this guy to the point that the lawyer that we had hired from over there was putting his head in his hands and looking over at me and the defense team and just laughing, doing everything he could not to burst out. She ended up interrogating their lawyer. And he ended up answering her question.
She who supposedly couldn't hold a coherent thought.
Yes.
Ron, I have to ask, because we only have about 10 minutes left. Why did you write the book?
Well, first and foremost, Mom was visiting some friends here in Manchester. My mother-in-law lives in Manchester, and she's helped my mother widen her new social circle. And she was there one day talking with some new friends and talking about her life as a young woman, as a child, and all in upstate New York. And then what was going on in her life now, and somebody said to her, gee, someone should write a book. And Mom came home and said, you know, my new friends all think somebody should write a book. Well, the writer in the family would apparently be me.
Yes.
So she liked the idea from the beginning. More importantly, in the early going in the book, the first several chapters are about my mother, so you get a sense of who she was, who she is. I interviewed her every day for nearly 6 months in the morning while she's having her breakfast. One of the signs of Alzheimer's is not being able to take care of yourself. My mother gets up every morning and she gets her breakfast and she creates her breakfast, and she does things like if she had a bowl of Cheerios and she likes to put bananas on it. I mean, she cuts the bananas and creates a little pattern and does all this, and she doesn't want any help. But in those breakfast periods, I would interview her, and there was this whole point of her life, which was a very rich life. It was not a life in the spotlight, but nonetheless it was a life in which she had tremendous experiences. Growing up in the Roaring '20s, going through the Great Depression, going through World War II, in which she served on the ration board in upstate New York. My father being on the USS Princeton and getting sunk and then being listed as missing in action. There were things that she lived through that were a compelling story. But I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
The primary reason, when all was said and done, was that at that point, my mom was 92 years old, and the final written record of her legacy was going to be that 38 pages of sludge that were filed as public documents in the Supreme Court in Albany, New York, and I said, no way. That entire case was a lie from the day it was written till the day it was decided. The harassment and all that went with it has continued right up to the present. But what we have here is the truthful record of my mother how she lived, what her life was, and what her life is.
Now, I just want to be sure that the audience knows we are talking right now with Ron Winter, and he is a professional journalist. His work has been nominated for a Pulitzer. This man is brilliant in his writing, and this book, Granny Snatching, is very much a true story. I want to point out a couple things, and that is that you have a list in the book of the lessons learned that you learned. You also have a list for those reading the story. Here are things for you to do, and more importantly, here are things that you should not do. And if we have time, we'll go through some of that. But I want to ask two personal things. Did you learn anything surprising about your mother as you interviewed her?
Yes. Yes, I did. There was far more depth than I had ever imagined. There were a lot of things when we were growing up as kids. She literally did live in the shadow of my father. And she seems to have come out of that shadow at this late stage in her life. But we found out she traveled all the way across the United States of America a couple of times, both ways, by train, to stay with my dad while he was in the Navy during World War II, while he was on shore. I put it one line in the book. I said she relied, as Tennessee Williams once put it, on the
kindness of strangers.
Kindness of strangers. Thank you. I had a mind block there. And she got it. And she has said to me that I don't think I could do that again. I don't think if I went back to that age that I would want to travel across the United States in the company of strangers. She was on troop trains. She was on buses, you know.
Wow.
And she had some time in Hollywood, a connection with an old acquaintance when she got to Hollywood on the way to San Diego to meet up with my father. She ended up staying at a house in Beverly Hills right next door to Bing Crosby. The woman there was a teacher who taught Bing Crosby. The guy on the other side was an orchid maker who made these who made her a beautiful corsage when my father's ship came in.
Oh,
and they got her first airplane ride, and she flew from Los Angeles to San Diego to meet my father when his ship came in with this orchid corsage, all done by these people in Hollywood. I had no idea about this thing.
So to me, see, that's part of the beauty of this book. Not only is it, I think primarily, you are educating the public. You are conveying a story that you went through, that your mother, your family's still going through. And it's educational, especially because of the appendices in the back. But there's such rich information in there about this woman, because I truly believe everyone's life is interesting. Everyone's life is worth telling. And you've done something that is not only educational for everyone else, but what a gift that you've given to her. Now, the other question I want to ask before we run out of time is, you said earlier that you and your wife made a decision, that each of you had lost your fathers, and that the decision was that if either mother required care, you would have the mother in your home as opposed to a nursing home. Any regrets about that? And is the decision still that you would do it for Jennifer's mother?
No regrets. Yes, we would. It's not easy. But I told my mom, I said, well, you know, you gave up the first 18 years of my life for me, so I'll give up the last 18 of yours for you. And she was 92 at the time, so I said, but at 110, we're going to have a discussion about this. The truth is, I made the point in the book, not everyone can do this, and not everyone should do this. But a lot of people can do it. And the issue of granny snatching, there is a statistic in there that there's over 250,000 incidents a year of some form of elder abuse, whether it's physical or mental or emotional. And granny snatching is in there. It's growing exponentially. People are being institutionalized. People are being put in the care of a custodian who is taking over their lives and taking their money from them. And in many cases, they don't need that. There are state programs available. My mother had a person come in to see her 2 mornings a week and help her with light housework. My question at that time was, well, why didn't we have somebody coming in every day of the week? You know, there had to, if she needed, we all recognized she needed some help. In the long run, the judge said that in New York. She's 92. She needs some help, but she's not incompetent. So there were things that can be done, and there are things that people can do. 2 politicians came to the launch last week in Hebron. Rob Simmons and Pam Sawyer, Pam's a state representative from our district. Rob is a former U.S. congressman now running for the Senate. Both of them said that because of this book, they recognize the need to coordinate across state lines. There is no national law governing the rights of the elderly. There is no uniform law. There were many issues that arose here in which I felt that they should not have been able to drag my mother out of Connecticut, force her back into New York, to have to testify over there. Why couldn't they have done the same thing here?
Right.
It would have been much easier on her, much less stressful. There is an entire medical issue relating to my mother with stress, very common with elderly people. These attacks can cause what they call delirium, in which they will lose their ability to communicate for varying lengths of time, brought on by stress, brought on by fear. It's been medically diagnosed. It was actually diagnosed in New York, re-diagnosed again over here. The real issue here is that these attacks of stress, of delirium, are cumulative and can eventually put her into a coma that she would never come out of.
Oh my gosh.
So heaping stress upon an elderly person like this is not the way to go.
No. Not at all. And just in the minute we have left here, I want to just go over quickly. You mentioned some of the lessons that you learned. And, you know, for those of you in the audience, you get the book. So all the list is in there, so you don't have to jot them down now. But document all phone calls. Keep phone records. Keep the emails. Keep the letters. Trust no one. I hate to think that that's true, but I can see where it is. Learn about the financial affairs of family members. Understand the ramifications of turning over control to someone else. Get a second opinion. Very, very important. You mentioned conserving resources. That's I know, extremely important. You mentioned in the don'ts, when I thought were particularly interesting, don't leave your fate in someone else's hands. You also said don't be surprised to see efforts made to access your money, and don't be discouraged by temporary setbacks. Ron, I'm happy to know that your story at this point has had a good outcome, and I wish your mother were here tonight so that we could say hello to her and wish her a long and happy life to come. And thank you very much for being with us on the show tonight.
Well, thank you for having me, Zita.
Okay. And to you in the viewing audience, please remember the words of Ursula Le Guin, who said, "There have been civilizations that did not use the wheel, but there have been no civilizations that did not tell stories." So find your story and find a way to tell it. And join us again next time. Bye-bye.
Food for the crew and guests was provided by Manchester Grill of Manchester, Connecticut, and Angelo's Restaurant of Glastonbury, Connecticut. Be sure to send your writing questions and your comments on the book club selection to Zita at page 1, P.O. Box 1515, Manchester, Connecticut, 06045-1515, or send an email to Zita at page1tv.com.